made your name known to those you gave me from the world. They were yours, and you gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Now they know that everything you have given me is from you. For the words that you gave to me I have given to them, and they have received them, and know in truth that I came from you. And they have believed that you sent me. I am asking on their behalf. I am not asking on behalf of the world, but on behalf of those whom you gave me, because they are yours. All mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I have been glorified in them. And now I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, protect them in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one as we are one. While I was with them, I protected them in your name that you have given me. I guarded them, and not one of them was lost except the one destined to be lost, so that the scriptures might be fulfilled. But now I am coming to you, and I speak these things in the world, so that they may have my joy made complete in themselves. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. I am not asking you to take them out of the world, but I ask you to protect them from the evil one. They do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you have sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sakes I sanctify myself, so that they also may be sanctified in truth. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
I've often wondered how long you would stand, so that was... Harold, cut that part out of the video when you put it on the web. That was just for fun. Huh. Can you tell I'm almost on sabbatical? Friends, in our lesson from Acts today, we hear again this an account from this moment in the life of the church when, after the ascension of Jesus into heaven, but before the day of Pentecost and the coming of the Holy Spirit, the apostles begin to get their plan together for the future of this movement. Peter stands up among all the believers who had gathered in Jerusalem and explains that the 12 apostles need to be restored. Jesus had chosen 12, and so they needed to choose someone to take Judas's place in the lineup. Peter insists that the person to fill this void needs to have the correct pedigree. That is, he must have been with them throughout their time with Jesus, from his baptism all the way up to his ascension. And there are only two who qualify in the crowd. Two men, that is. Surely there were women there who would too have qualified, but that's a whole other sermon now, isn't it? Needless to say, the two that are listed as qualifying and meeting Peter's requirements are Matthias and this other fellow, Joseph Barsabbas Justus. And so they cast lots to choose. Lots, you might remember, that's when you write names on pieces of paper, or in the apostles' time on pot shards, and put them in a basket and shake the basket, and whatever piece of paper or potsherd flies out first, that is God's choice for whatever the question is that you're asking. So they write these two names on potsherds, shake them, and Matthias' name pops out first. And so it is that he is deemed God's chosen replacement for Judas. And the symbolic number of 12 is restored, like the 12 tribes of Israel. And soon the day of Pentecost comes and the church moves forward. But what about that other guy? The guy whose name was on a potsherd. He had qualified to be chosen as a replacement apostle, but his name didn't pop out of the basket first. This Joseph Barsabbas Justus, or as we'll say from now on, just Barsabbas. What became of him? He had known Jesus just as well as Matthias, yet Matthias is the one who ends up with the feast day on our calendar and not Barsabbas. What did he do, I wonder, after not being chosen as one of the official apostles? We don't have any record of his activity. The most we have is one mention of someone who may or may not be he, who travels with Barnabas and Paul, but we're not sure at all whether that's the same Barsabbas. Seems that he either gave up on this whole apostleship, Jesus movement thing, and went on his own, angry at having not been chosen, or he decided he would stick it out anyway, even without the notoriety that would come with being one of the big 12. I like to imagine that Barsabbas chose to stick it out. I also imagine that he began to see his non-selection as more of a blessing than as a curse. The 12 apostles ended up having really big jobs, and some of them were very well known. They led public lives and had important roles to play in the development of the early church. And like with any public role, surely people had expectations of them. We might call it people transferring onto the apostles what they think they should be doing and how they should be doing it, whether or not those expectations of them resonated with their genuine call. Barsabbas, on the other hand, had the privilege of not being a public figure. He could go about his work and his ministry unimpeded by the day-to-day demands of being one of those high-profile apostles. Barsabbas could claim his own apostleship even without the official title and go out as one sent to do God's work. He could do ministry the way that Jesus had taught. That is, quietly and without expectation of recognition or accolade. He could serve God's people without anyone knowing about it, even down to today. Just this past week, the New York Times ran a piece online about the 200 highest paid CEOs of American companies. All the big ones that we'd expect were there. There was Halliburton and U.S. Steel and Microsoft, and there were even a few surprisers like the CEO of GoPro, you know, those cameras you put on your helmet when you're going to go hurtling down the side of a mountain or something adventurous like that. One name that wasn't on that list was the name of Dan Price. Now, some of us may have heard about Dan Price in the last month or so. Mr. Price is the CEO and founder of Gravity Payments. It's a Seattle-based payment processing firm. And just last month, almost a month from today ago, it was announced that he was taking a 90% pay cut. 90% pay cut. Now granted, he was still going to make plenty of money, but he was taking a 90% pay cut so that all of his employees could be brought up to a more fair and equitable salary range. He studied a vast amount of research on the subject, and it was about employee happiness as it related to compensation. And as it turns out, according to this research, there is a maximum salary for improving job satisfaction and happiness, above which salary increases don't have a significant impact on happiness anymore. And so he has vowed to bring all those employees of his company up to that salary, the salary that research shows offers maximum happiness, sacrificing his own exorbitant salary until that is accomplished. And he did it all without fanfare. It didn't come out and be made public until after it was already well underway, his plan for the people of his company. And even now, though many of us have likely heard about him, surely there are some who have not. This is the kind of work that Barsabbas got to do. Got to do when he wasn't chosen as one of the 12, when he wasn't put on that list of the 200 most powerful and well-paid. Barsabbas wasn't chosen to be one of the 12, but I'll imagine that he still claimed that role of apostleship, just like anyone can do. I also imagine that he was probably more successful at it than even Matthias, who had the title and prestige. Being an apostle means literally to be sent with a goal or something to accomplish. So as we join the apostles in this time in between, this time between Jesus' ascension into heaven and the coming of the Holy Spirit, this time in between when we wonder what comes next, we can ask ourselves, what is it then that we are being sent to do? What are we going to claim as our ministry? What are we claiming as our apostleship? Even if that work will never be known to anyone but God. As Barsabbas, the fortunate ones are able to do ministry as Jesus taught, quietly, earnestly, and lovingly. So on this day, claim your ministry and pray for the Spirit's power and guidance to accomplish it. And despite what the world tells you about your chosenness or not chosenness, about your importance or unimportance to the community, you know that God has chosen you. And God is calling you to do Christ's work in the world as the only hands and feet that Christ has on this earth today. Be that apostle that God has called you to be, even if your name isn't the first one to pop out of the basket.